Welcome to Western New York Tonight. I'm your host, Tammy Lee Demler. Also, welcome those listening on WLNF. We have joining me tonight, David Esposito. It's been a whole year since you've been here. We have good things to talk about. Right. He is the managing partner with Harvest Time Partners Incorporated. It's an excellent source of kind of basing our whole essence of character while having fun too. I love that. Right. So welcome back.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Appreciate you having me.
Tell us what's new since I last saw you. I know you have a lot going on.
So Harvest Time Partners is a personal and professional development business. It's supportive of individuals, families, and organizations on the importance of character and how character can create opportunities in people's lives. We've developed a number of resources, and since we last talked, we launched a number of different products, most of them oriented towards families and helping improve communication with families. And we're excited through the holiday season. We had good launch of the products, and we're looking to move those products into the market in 2014.
I've been talking a lot about you ever since I connected with you last year, and people who have had, families and a need for being able to bring their family together, learning more about morality and ethics and all of those good things. I said, I usually have authors on my show, but I have a man who made a game. That's just so cool. I'm so proud of your progress in being able to help the community get closer together, because you mentioned as the world gets more connected with all this media, our families are somehow not staying connected or connecting as well, would you say?
It's very true. I think your audience would probably say it and see it in their own lives. I'm married with 4 children, and there's been plenty of research out over the number of years that as our society has gotten more connected with things like the internet, smartphones, all of those things, families have really struggled to stay connected through that. I think I can see in our own life when you're driving down the road with kids in the cars, if you look at the car next to you, somebody's got a tablet in front of their eyes or a smartphone, and there's very little face-to-face communication going on in a lot of that. And frankly, as you know, that's still a critical life skill to be able to discuss very real-world issues face-to-face and talk through those. So at Harvest Time Partners, we developed a number of resources to be able to not solve world peace, but to be able to support parents and kids with an environment where they could discuss real-world issues in a very common structure and framework in a face-to-face world. And it gives chances for people to perhaps experience situations or talk about situations before they really experience in the real world.
And it sort of takes the hot seat away, because you're not coming up with this question for any reason. It just happens to be in the deck, and it comes up, and you're able to then have a conversation starter in a scenario that may not necessarily apply to your current circumstance, but it helps open up those doors, helps people communicate more effectively, I think.
It's important. The other part of what we try to reinforce in the importance of character, we feel that character is really that individual's inner voice that guides their thoughts, their decisions, and their actions. And we think character is really built and strengthened over time through thoughts, decisions, and actions that are based on principles like trust, honesty, compassion, loyalty. And so the games, these resources, encourage people to use a principle when they respond to those scenarios. And for most of what people are familiar with, the law of the harvest, that you reap what you sow. And so that we want to encourage people that even in the chaos of our today's world and the ups and downs, it seems like our world is getting more intense, more complex, more uncertain by the moment, that still adhering to those timeless principles like compassion in a relationship, grace in a relationship, will sow the seeds that will reap an abundant harvest over time. May not happen tonight, as you have children too. I mean, you get those ups and downs with raising children, but boy, for the long haul, if you can maintain a consistent approach around those kind of principles, we think more times than not you do reap an abundant harvest over time.
Now you have these games for children and adults, and since the last time you were here, you have kind of like, what do you have? You described a dinner party. You have opportunities to.
We have 3 different, they're called face-to-face.
Yes.
And it gets at that theme. You know what, we want people talking face-to-face. We have enough going on, clicking and kind of looking around in our world. And so they're very simple conversation starters. I'll start with a team one, because they're usually, so it basically is a very simple icebreaker conversation starter. And you just simply pick a card. Everybody goes around, and all of the cards end with the question, what would you do?
I'm not going to answer, though. I'm going to abstain.
That's right.
Because if I don't answer the right way,
this
no,
might
I'm
be
just
good.
kidding.
Imagine you have teenagers, I have
Yep,
teenagers.
yep.
So here's a teen scenario.
All right.
You are at your friend's house, and it is close to the time that your parents told you to be home. You are having a great time with your friends. One of them says, stay another 30 minutes. Your parents won't mind. What would you do? Now, I have 4 children. Every now and then somebody strolls into the house a little bit later than they should have.
Right.
We have a conversation about that. But so it gets at that kind of discussion. And what's the dynamic of these games? We encourage, sometimes teens play together with them, but also parents with teens. And what happens is throughout the course of the deck, sometimes I'm going to pull a card where I'm a parent, and I may only be a teenager, so I have to think from a different perspective to describe how I'd respond. Same thing for a parent. I may pull a teen scenario, and it'll provide a different perspective. You know, walking in another person's shoes is very helpful. Here, I just grabbed one. Here's a parent one, so maybe together you and I can answer
all right,
this
ready,
one,
go.
right? So your 14-year-old daughter complains that you and your spouse are so strict compared to other parents. She wants to know why you don't trust her like other parents trust their kids. What would you do? You know, so we can have a discussion about what trust means and how, you know, repeated behavior that's in line with our expectations builds trust over time. But when you continually come home late on these other times, that erodes trust, and that puts parents being in a position where we have to restrict certain freedoms if you're not demonstrating trusting behavior. So at least gives a chance to talk, and I think some of these are very valuable to
Well,
hear
each of them have
teenagers play
absolutely been, and I'm thinking, is the answer on the back? No.
See, that is
WWDD.
yeah,
What would
right.
David do?
That's
No,
right.
I think that, now how did you research these questions? Because these are all, both of them, totally relevant.
Right. So, well, one, we've probably, my wife and I, 20 years of marriage, and these kids have probably lived about, 80% of these scenarios. But we did a lot of market research. We had a number of people help us with the games, put out at least a lot of scenarios, and we had parents, educators comb through them, suggest new ones, and we tried to land. Each one of the games has 96 scenarios categorized in either the role of a teenager, in this case, a parent. Some of them are also general work-life scenarios. And so we did a lot of research that way, and we wanted to, through the hundreds that we came with, provide those that are most relevant to today's world. So there's certainly many online. I think one for fun that always gets people in a dinner party edition is your spouse seems to spend a great deal of time online using various social media sites. You are concerned this habit is affecting your relationship. I think everybody has probably had that scenario in their home where somebody's on a computer looking at Facebook or whatever, YouTube forever, and it's hampering people's ability to connect. It's not like perhaps a time ago where families sat around and perhaps watched the TV show. Now everybody's got a smartphone, they're watching their own show, and everybody's all over the place, and we're losing some of those critical opportunities to either speak into our children or just have a good dialogue on things.
So what would your scenario outcome be for that card?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. We'd have a conversation.
Yeah,
we certainly have had about those to say, there's a balance in all these things. I think from a principled standpoint, it is still about love. It's about understanding. There's a reason we gravitate to different things. It just might not be an online deal. Somebody may, love take any habit or any, choice to do too much of. Maybe I golf too much, I fish too much. We all have these things that take time away from our relationships. So does work, right? We all have to work and do that. I think what we try to reinforce in the principles is that there really is no accomplishment that can compensate for a failure or disruption at home. And so as we think about those things, despite how much I may want to
golf
surf
and
the
fish,
internet, golf, fish,
fish,
get caught up in all the different media events, I probably should think about exercising restraint and unplug and connect with those that really matter most. I mean, 10 years from now, I don't know what will be the gadget that will draw our attention away, but we probably will hope we'll still be communicating with our children and trying to make a difference. And so, again, we try to reinforce that law of the harvest, that you reap what you sow.
And I think too, in terms of tradition or transition points in life, you know, you have your children, they grow up, then you're with your spouse. You're always in need of cultivating that relationship, because ultimately it'll be back to just the two of you. So I think, you know, something like this can really help begin that reemergence of conversation. You know, you're so busy doing everything else, you know, as you described.
No, it's very much so. And I think the other part of it is that's the blessing of life itself, right? Through each of these transitions, we've got parents that are aging now, you know, so that brings a whole dynamic into the relationship, you know, and we have, you know, children going off to college and coming back and living in the house, and have
but I thought you were supposed to go away, right?
I know, right? And parents who are getting older and need care, and so life continues to grow in complexity, continues to grow in uncertainty. I mean, boy, we could probably run through the list of just uncertain tragedies that have happened over the last year. These, you know, terrible incidents that happens in school, movie theater, all these kind of very intense, very unpredictable events happen. And what we try to do, again, these conversation games are just one tool for families to maybe get some real world issues on the table and start talking about those. And there are some very sensitive issues. Some people, you know, with the teenage one, there's stuff on alcoholism, pregnancy, all of those things.
But that's real world. I mean, honestly.
Exactly. And that's what we try to describe. Say, boy, I'd rather have a conversation about these issues than not, because it does happen, right? Chaos happens in our lives, and the best thing we can do is begin to get a perspective on that, and hopefully if we can think and dialogue about it when it really does happen, because inevitably it will, something will happen, hopefully we're in a better position to respond.
To communicate. Just a logistical question. Can you win these games? Do you win them? Does somebody win? Is it like a moving block on a board? Because here I understand this.
On these is straightforward conversation. On Abundant Harvest, there's a teen and adult version. There technically is a winner by points, because as you go around the board, and maybe we could, you know, open up the board, but as you move around the board, you get certain points for landing on spaces. Some of that's just the luck of the roll of the dice, and that's a little bit about like life too. We tried to relate that to it. Sometimes it just goes your way.
It's the luck of the roll.
But yes, you're declared a winner. We describe in the instructions that those who really play honest and open usually are the winners. But
and competitively.
That's
no,
right.
Just kidding.
The competition does come out. You do get some points.
We're going to take a break, but before we do, just contact information for those listening on the radio who might not be able to see anything that we're talking about. A number that they can call, or a website where they can buy?
Website's probably the easiest. HarvestTimePartners.com. There are games are available. Also Amazon.com. A lot of people shop on that. They're fully available on that and a number of websites. But HarvestTimePartners.com, we have a number of videos and a lot of information.
I love it. And they're migrating to stores near you. But if you're going to get them online now so that you're all set. So we'll come back in just a few minutes, so don't go away. Welcome back to Western New York Tonight. I'm your host, Tammy Lee Demler. Also welcome those listening in on the radio on 90.5 FM WLNF. We have joining us today David Esposito, who's no stranger to our set. He's been here about a year ago, plus or minus, managing partner of Harvest Time Partners Incorporated, bringing us some games that will help start out conversations that might not be so easily started out otherwise, and with a proactive approach to be able to address, you know, principles, character building, all of those things that, you know, we're not necessarily always born with this decision-making capacity. We need to kind of think through scenarios. We really do, before we get to them, hopefully, right? That's true. I mean, I think there are many natural laws that can help guide us. We mentioned the law of the harvest on you really reap what you sow. I mean, that's an important principle, not only physical law, but in the relationships that we have. We can't build trusting relationships overnight. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. Just like you can't cram on a farm. You can't just kind of goof off most of the year, show up in October and reap harvest. You really got to work to do that. And that comes through experience and knowledge, and that's where these conversation games can be just some helpful tools for parents, for educators,
to help guide their children in some real life scenarios.
And just saying, just because I said so, sometimes works, but doesn't always. But
That's
I
right.
tried to use some of that from when my mom passed that down, and it did work sometimes. So
That's right.
it's good to be able to say, this is why it can't be done. Right. This is why we don't want to do that. Tell me a little bit about the stores in this area. I know we talked about online. People can purchase this online. But in our area, it's migrating out.
We're continuing to make progress in a number of areas. Raff and Friends is one of the toy stores in the local mall here. For sure, the Parables Christian store is also carrying the games, and we hope to bring to the market a few more. We were just down in Atlanta for about 5 days at the International Atlanta Gift Show, and we're going to be in the New York Toy Fair down in Manhattan in February, and that's where many of the retailers will hopefully pick up the game. We are in negotiations with some big box retailers, the typical ones that you would think about. We hopefully to have the games available in those.
So
also.
Exciting.
It's very nice.
And good for schools too. I would say that this would be a kind of an appropriate thing for people at schools to be considering as well as a teaching tool.
Very much so. So there's been some schools that have adopted the games to be able to use, certainly in the high school with the teen versions, and also in the elementary schools with the kids version. We've also had a number of churches, youth pastors, youth ministers, Sunday school teachers that every now and then need some content to discuss some things, and so these games have been very helpful to again describe real life scenarios and have children discuss it. So I think it has a wide range of aspects that way, but definitely for both families and educators, wherever those, as broad a definition as educators as you can find.
Right. We had mentioned that the world is getting more complicated, although I think people would argue that it's always been complicated. It's just the complications have changed over time. Yeah. But we are facing a lot of conflicting messages from those which we try to support and sponsor in our home, cultivate within. Then our children go out and they're bombarded with different messages, different so-called leaders leading them sometimes astray. And you've mentioned a few specifically in sports and entertainment. Maybe we could just touch on those, because I was reminded by those people.
Yeah, I think you can look at the instances of performance enhancing drugs in sports. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, that was on the small fringes. Some professional athletes, some Olympics, that started to get testing in the early 80s, late 70s. It still was on the fringes, but over probably the past decade or so, it seems to have been not only, a lot of issues have been brought forth in professional sports, and there's been escalation of testing and fines, and a lot of the professional sports have done a lot to clean up that. But you hear now of it very much throughout college, and even hear about high school level athletes in performance enhancing drugs. So that has become a pretty significant impact in today's athletics. And if you're a young kid, elementary, middle school, and you begin to approach into high school, if you're not careful of the influences that are around you, sometimes you may think that's an appropriate path to be competitive in the world of sports. And I think there's numerous athletes who would put their hand up and say, I've never done that stuff, I don't need to do this stuff, and I still compete. But there's a lot of pressure out there for athletes today, big money on the line, and I think there's just the recent issues with the Alex Rodriguez suspension and a number of Major League Baseball players, the Lance Armstrong issues.
That was huge.
Just that's just very challenging to help guide kids, as many of them are growing up to dream to be great athletes.
Well, and they hold them as as this mentor, as this somebody that they want to be, and to have that be the outcome of how they got there is just not only disappointing, but it's a lie. It's misleading.
I mean, and this is not
it's cheating.
It's right. It's not it's the short-term gain that in so many aspects never produces that long-term abundant harvest that you want. They're saying there's no free lunch. You can take shortcuts every once in a while, but eventually the truth comes out. One of the things when you mentioned about our world getting more complex, although it was complex before, I think the level of transparency in our world today is unmatched. You can't do anything in the public eye as a political official, a senior official, and an executive in a company, on the athletic field. It comes out. You cannot hope to sweep things under the rug anymore. It just comes out in our world today. That level of transparency, in my thoughts, is a good thing, because we should be operating consistent with these principles, and if not, the more we can help identify those problems, provide support where people have them, because nobody's perfect, right? That's the other part of this thing. We all make mistakes. One of the principles we highlight in the games is grace. You know, that's really unmerited favor, mercy. You know, and so we need to demonstrate those, but it also is something that we don't want a society of, you know, kids growing up, or any of us, to lie, cheat, or steal to get ahead. Same thing in business. I mean, we can look at the financial crisis, not just athletics, right? Look over the financial crisis the last 5 years. Some of the steps that people in business took to try to take advantage of an opportunity in the market, or not just, or individuals that saw a good opportunity in the housing market. I can buy, flip houses, stretch a little here and there, and then you've got
the Ponzi schemes, and that's, you know, ruining people's lives.
Correct, and there's numerous individuals of that. So again, that emphasis of immediate gratification, short-term shortcuts to get ahead, sounds great, feels good, but in the end, it usually ends up in destruction and harming others, in relationships or businesses. And one of the things I think we can all do a better job of is looking through that long term with some perspective, and realize, you know what, that may feel good for a moment, but long term probably means it's going to cause more pain and destruction.
I've got to say this, as you're talking about this, I'm feeling reassured by your responses. I'm feeling like that is really a good way to say that. Parents might think it might be too much for me to handle. You know what I mean? These scenarios might come up, and oh my gosh, well, what is the right thing to say? You know, because we've all been challenged by some degree of ethics and principles, I'm sure, at some point.
Right.
You know, what is the right thing to say to lead my child on a path that's ethical or principle based? Any answers that can make people feel that they're competent in being able to provide the response?
Right. Well, I would just say having the discussion is a great first step. Most problems in life are because we probably didn't have that discussion, and we moved very quickly with an emotional response, and to get a chance to kind of think and process. So these games, and whether it's these games or scenarios, you and I could probably sit down and dream up 50 that are not in these games.
Or go through the deck and make sure you take out everything that you didn't have a good answer for.
Again, my reinforcement to parents, just like myself, I'm living this, I'm making more mistakes and I'm going positive, but you know, we're in the ring, we're having the conversation, and if our intentions are true, that we really want the best for the relationships around us, and we speak to that level of transparency that we don't know everything, humility that we've made mistakes also. Some of the scenarios in there about having too much to drink as a teenager and adult, and wanting to drive. You know, I can speak very openly to my teenagers about poor choices I made when I was their age. I wouldn't want you to make those choices, you know, and so if we speak with that level of honesty and openness, we'll end up in a pretty good spot. You know, I think what usually happens when we kind of get very emotional very quickly, and perhaps revisit maybe some choices that were made or conversations that were made in the past, we sometimes can get stuck in the mud. But I would still say, let's start having a conversation. You know what? And having a principle-based response. If you know, we give a list of principles in the games.
Go back to those,
just grab one of those. That's the intent of the game. Boy, what can I think about with trust? Or even, you know, there's just some very difficult scenarios in there.
Yeah, I can already see it, that you really thought through it.
Boy, let's talk about it. I'd rather have that conversation with my sons or my daughters about an unexpected event, unexpected pregnancy, drunk driving accident. Boy, let's talk about that, you know, and how we'd work through that. And still, as a family, we gotta figure this thing out, right? And so, I think that provides some direction, certainly to my family, I'd say to others. And the other piece of it, just the end, we're not all perfect in this thing, right? I mean, we're gonna continue to make mistakes. It's a bit of the journey, but you know, if we can continue to make progress, show the right intentions, keep focus on the long term, usually it works out.
So you should be the online trainer. You know, like they have those exercise videos, like that you get the direct connect to David, just to make sure it's all good. You mentioned grace and being able to, you know, convey with mercy and grace. How does that fold into this? Because do these scenarios then lend itself to how you would apply grace and mercy, forgiveness?
It gives the opportunity to do that. So some of the scenarios are in there that, you know, difficult ones, or, you know, the one of the scenarios is in one of the teenage ones. Your 15, 14-year-old daughter's crying to you that you and your spouse are fighting all the time, and I feel like nobody's happy in this house, and I just feel like this is a miserable place. What do you do? Well, I think there's an opportunity in those kind of scenarios. One, to show some compassion, understanding to your daughter, you know, praise the courage to kind of speak up, but then also reflect on the way I'm perhaps treating my spouse, or the steamroller I may be in the house that's causing all these, to think about that. So I mean, I think there are opportunities for there. There are, you know, unfortunate events that spouse does to another spouse in there, and I think one of the most solidifying steps we can take in relationships when somebody has perhaps done us wrong is demonstrate a level of mercy and grace. Provide them, perhaps in this scenario, undeserved favor. In that scenario, that's the law of reciprocity, right? That person most likely will reciprocate that behavior when I stub my toe. And that's an important principle to share with children. We're going to make mistakes. If I can overcome my initial reaction to want to judge that and jump all over it and demonstrate mercy and grace, that boomerang, that reciprocity, that reciprocal behavior by that person will come back. And again, we'll be in a better journey in our relationship.
I love that. We're going to take another break. This is going so fast, so we have to make sure we get to all the points. Tell me again the website so people can write it down and go right to it.
Sure. www.harvesttimepartners.com.
Perfect. We'll be back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Western New York Tonight. I'm your host, Tammy Lee Demler. Joining me, David Esposito, who is the managing partner with Harvest Time Partners. He's been here before. Never enough, though. I always feel better when he's here. The world's a better place. I feel like it's all good. Welcome back.
Thanks, Tammy Lee. I'm glad to be here.
We're going to be talking about the board, because I did ask, do you win this? And you're going to tell us a little bit more about the dimensions of the game. But we were talking about people in our world that can cause some confusion. And we were talking about sports icons. It even migrates into politics now. And you were mentioning entertainment. And of course, we all go right to a certain place when we think about bad images. Old Disney icons now kind of leading our daughters and sons astray in a way.
It is a bit challenging for us, you know, and hey, one thing we try to drive home in seminars and workshops that we do in these board games is that, you know, ultimately you and I are responsible for the choices that we make. You know, we may encounter certain situations in our life, but our response is going to drive a certain outcome, and we own that. And it's perhaps, you know, the greatest freedom that we really have is mine and your freedom to choose, regardless of what situation we're in. We own that choice. We ought to just keep that freedom, and it'll drive a certain outcome on those. But it is getting more and more difficult when you think about the different childhood stars that have migrated through, whether it's Disney or all these other different episodes that are now out there, and then they move into adulthood. It's very hard to find those examples who were childhood stars that migrated successfully through all of that, which has got to be a lot. You know, I'm not an international movie star, so I know there's a tremendous amount of pressure on those things, but boy, it sets a tough example for parents to work through and talk to their kids who may have grown up watching them in those young episodes, and now, you know, they're doing all these crazy things on different music awards or getting, you know, arrested for different issues. And again, nobody's perfect in this game.
I understand that.
But it is.
But it clouds the picture.
We do very much get bombarded, or people may say, hey, that's the path to success. The more that I can be outlandish and over the top, boy, I'll get the attention. I'll get the million followers on Twitter, on YouTube, by sending all these things, and that's unfortunate, because in our world you may get a lot of followers on that, but what we've seen in the past is that ends in a bad spot. Your moment of glory may be all you have, and then you're dealing with a lot of challenges. So no, it's tough, and I think we all owe it to ourselves and our families to continue to guide and direct as best we can, because whether it was Elvis Presley, I don't know when it was, you know, whatever generation has to deal with the different issues, but it does seem like, and maybe now because my kids are teenagers and we're growing, that it does seem like it's getting a little bit more intense though, and it seems to be a little bit more, certainly with the internet and all that, somewhat just more pervasive. We seem to see it in our face more often.
And I think one of the things we've talked about before is, you know, our purpose really, I believe, is to come in and make the world a better place. You know, that's kind of like, we don't have a lot of time to do that. You know, our lifetime is pretty short, but to be able to do that, you have to think about those principle-based, everything that you do, everybody's watching, and it needs to really be based on principle and a moral code that will make people be in a better place, you know, and this is just such a great way to be able to help move our children in that direction, and even having, you know, adult peers, you know, who may not be necessarily thinking along those lines. What a great way to continue to build that conversation. I love that.
That's what we, you know, we try to do. Again, it goes back to the conversation we had just earlier. It is about having the conversation, because there is, you know, there's no cookbook approach to the complexity of life today. However, there are principles that, if applied in a variety of different techniques, we think we'll end up in a good spot. Those principles of trust, of compassion. I mean, they're timeless. They were in favor 200 years ago. They'll be in favor 200 years from now. They're universal. I mean, they're consistent with the 5 or 6 major religions in the world. They're self-evident. You don't have to, you know, speak to the definition of compassion, of love. I mean, they're there. And so if we can use those as we anchor through decisions, we'll be in a better spot
all
than many
better
other
off.
times, right? No, and I think that you know, most people are, one of the greatest needs outside of food and survival and all that is that sense of encouragement, of belonging. And by utilizing some of these principles in those relationships most closest to us, we can feed that need of people feeling like they belong, that they're wanted, and that they've accomplished things. And we can do that through an execution of those principles.
Can you give us another example of maybe one of the card vignettes, and then also the board, because you've opened this up to us. It's beautiful. I mean, it's, you know, it's interesting for anybody who would be playing the game, but tell me a little bit about what we're seeing here.
Sure. So the board is a very traditional board game, and you roll the dice. You grab a principal piece to start, whether it's loyalty or patience. And as you move around the board, we designed the spaces in the board to reflect probably choices that you or I have made throughout life. Some recognize good choices, some recognize bad choices. So as you roll the dice, here's one.
I saw that same one.
That's a bad,
Forgot your wedding anniversary.
Receive a poor harvest reward card. So again, it plays on that, you reap what you sow. So, boy, you forget your anniversary, that's a tough one, right? So poor harvest for that. But as you roll around, served breakfast to your spouse in bed, receive an abundant harvest reward. That's a good one.
Okay, they balanced out.
That's
then.
right. Here's one. So every now and then, right? Took out your frustrations from work on your child, receive a poor harvest reward. Probably many of us have come home with a stressed out work, may have said something we probably didn't want to say, but came out in the heat of the moment. The board and the spaces, use those as a reminder for us. Cheated on your expense account at work, receive a poor harvest reward card, right? That stuff happens from time to time that wouldn't be too good. You know, stayed inside on a sunny day, receive a modest harvest reward. So there's a couple fun things.
If you were playing a game with your family, that could be
That's
okay,
right. That's a positive. That's right. So again, there's a number of different scenarios. Some lighthearted, some pretty serious. You know, there's one space in there that says, "Hey, told your child you'd never accomplish your dreams." Wouldn't think of saying that, but you know, there's probably plenty of kids that have heard that from a parent or coach at some point. And the game again tries to reinforce that's a poor harvest choice on that one, and to encourage people, if you're playing that, boy, if that was said to me as a kid, I don't want to say that to my child, or boy, you know what, I did say that to my kid a year ago, let me try to make amends, right? You know, so it just tries to put real issues on the table, so that just as a good encouragement to people about try to do the right thing.
I love that.
But as you move around the board, you land on a certain space. The color of the space designates what card you should pull. So since I forgot my wedding anniversary, I would pull a green card, which is a work scenario.
Okay.
They all end with that question like we talked about before, what would you do? So this one, after your company holiday party, you notice your boss had a little too much to drink and is getting ready to drive home, right? Some work cultures, it'd be very difficult for people to approach their boss, regardless of the scenario, right? If it's a pretty top-down organization, a hard-driving boss, sometimes fear rules the day, and you may not say something. But we would all agree, boy, what would be the right thing to do would be to, get your courage and talk to your boss about that. Try to drive them home, find a taxi or whatever. But in some work environments, you probably experienced it like me. Sometimes people know not to say anything to the boss, right? And so again, it's one scenario that may be helpful as you go through. When you think about if you landed on a red one, we did do a red one, I think, I forget, on the cheating on your expense account, right?
That's the bad one. So.
Here's one that people fight about every once in a while. So this is a spouse scenario where your spouse has very little discipline in money matters. He or she will buy anything in a moment's notice, and you are starting to lose control of your credit card debt. What would you do? Right? A lot of people over the last handful of years.
That's the answer.
That's a helpful one. Yeah, I think that's very direct and good. But so again, there are a couple scenarios in here that really just get to it. This is a life scenario. Yeah. So here's one in dating areas. Your boyfriend, girlfriend continually and unapologetically puts work ahead of spending time with you. On several occasions, unexpected work projects have ruined your weekend plans together. What would you do? It doesn't just happen in boyfriend and girlfriend. Right. Happens in real stuff. And so again, it's we have a number of 150 plus scenarios in these, so they don't cover everything, but they get at a few issues that at least have a conversation. When we've played with our teenagers or other friends, those kind of scenarios, they may not have experienced those life scenarios yet. It's about a couple others sharing an apartment with friends and somebody's falling short on the bills, but you get a chance to have a little discussion about those as opposed to, boy, they leave and they figure it out on their own. At least it provides perhaps an opportunity to guide children in an appropriate choice.
And I can imagine that sometimes you don't ever finish the game because that leads into other conversations.
Yes.
It's an interesting.
In the times we played, yes, sometimes also emotion takes over too, and say, yeah, I remember when either you did that or did that, and yeah, maybe the game doesn't end. Like I said, we're all working in this journey, and sometimes you're not doing it right. But you're right. What we encourage in the instructions, it's not, even though there's points and you go to the end. Don't finish it. If you're having a good conversation, keep digging for gold, man, and have that conversation for a while.
I love it.
That's the intent of the game. Just
bring tissues in case. I'm just kidding. You had a point here. I wanted to make sure that we know that there's a scholarship for high school seniors. Did you want to touch on that?
Sure. So part of my journey up here in Buffalo, so with Harvest Time Partners, we have a foundation, Harvest Time Partners Foundation, that supports organizations in the importance of character with individuals. So we have a partnership with the Character Council of Western New York, and we had 2 phases in that. Actually, today is the closing of the college scholarships. We're awarding $1,000 scholarships. We actually just received over 100 applications.
Oh my gosh.
We announced that 3 months or so ago, and we had over 100 applications that we have to sort through for those. And there's 3 $1,000 scholarships we're awarding to those individuals. But to hear the stories of those individuals and the strength of their character in high school, it's a testament to the quality of individuals in the high school area in Western New York. Throughout the whole area of Western New York, just tremendous stories. So
I'm going to have you hold there
sure.
just because we have to go to break. I want to hear more about this, so I'm going to stop you right there.
Sounds great.
We'll come back, but give us the website again.
HarvestTimePartners.com.
Okay, we'll take right up where we left off, so don't go away. We'll be back with David Esposito in just a moment. I'll let you stay where you served. Welcome back to Western New York Tonight. I'm your host, Tammy Lee Demler. Joining me, if you haven't already been with us the whole hour, David Esposito, who is a managing partner with Harvest Time Partners. We're talking a little bit about your service background. We'll just jump right to that. Thank you for your service in combat. And I understand that's how you kind of came up with some of these leadership aspects.
Well, it's a bit of a start for me. I mean, I went to school at West Point Military Academy just down the road, and I served with the 101st Airborne Division in the Persian Gulf War. And I think, through all of that training and education, the experiences over there, and certainly general life experiences, would say the value of things like trust and loyalty and commitment and perseverance certainly were well a part of my journey through those experiences, but they're very valuable skills or principles in life. And so we've tried to bring those forth in these board games and the other resources we talked about.
Well, we appreciate your contribution and your service for sure, and I want to make sure everybody knows that. I cut you short when we were going to break about talking about your scholarships and a grant that's upcoming, so I'll let you give, the floor is back to you.
Sure. So we are here in Buffalo. We've partnered with the Character Council of Western New York. The organization has done a great job over the years of reinforcing the importance of character, and we collectively partnered on 2 phases. The first phase was college scholarships, 3 $1,000 scholarships to seniors this year. We just closed enrollment for those today. We received about 100 applications for those, and we'll be sorting through those over the next couple months and granting those $1,000 awards to students. We plan to continue that for many years to come. So if people, now juniors, they should be looking for the flyers to come out probably October of next year. But we're also getting ready to kick off, probably make some pretty big announcements in the next few weeks about grants for schools to purchase character-based educational materials. We're broadening up to public, private, parochial schools who want to purchase these kind of resources to support the importance of character, and the applications and all the details. I don't want to say too much about it. It'll all be released in the next few weeks as we fine-tune that, but it'll be afforded to at least 5 programs in Western New York this year, and that's another program we hope to continue for the years to come. The Character Council of Western New York has just done a tremendous job of infusing the importance of character in schools, and many school systems have really done a great job of bringing that out.
How will we know? Is it a press release? It'll be on your website? When will we learn?
We'll be putting out a press release. We'll have it on our website. Also, the Western New York, the Character Council of Western New York, their website will also make it available for them.
And the scholarships, I understand now that they're closed for the year. I expect it'll be annually offered.
Correct.
What's the criteria? What should people be expecting for application?
These are unique in that the typical scholarships go to maybe the top academics, the top athletic folks. This is on the importance of character. So we have there's 3 components of the application process. One is for the student to define what their definition of success is, and to take 3 of the character virtues that the Character Council has, 3 of the 49 virtues, and write about 3 of those, things like compassion, honesty, all of those, to describe that. And then they have a parent or friend write an essay about that individual, describing those kind of character qualities in that individual, and then a teacher or a coach. And so collectively that makes the application process. And then we have a set of criteria that a decision team is going to work through, a scholarship committee, to be able to determine who ultimately are the 3 that are chosen for the scholarships. And I was just incredibly impressed to have 100+ applications come in, and the stories are just tremendous. It just shows the strength of character in the Western New York area, and certainly amongst some amazing kids that put the application in.
And it's a lot of work for you and your team to filter through all of those, the 100 stories, 100 applications of describing what principle and ethics are. That has to be kudos to you for doing that.
Well, I think Suzanne McKinney, who runs the Character Council, and we have a subcommittee that is really working together to determine that, and we're still forming a number of teams to be able to sort through those. We're glad to do it. Suzanne and her team's glad to do it. I mean, it's just great to hear these stories, and we hope to make a broader announcement as these get awarded, to frankly recognize all the efforts of the kids that put their nominations in.
Because they all have stories. They all have something to share with the world. I love that.
You're exactly right.
The Character Council you're mentioning, how did you become affiliated with them, or did that sort of start first?
That affiliation's probably almost 3 years in length now. We've made connections. There's not too many people with a dedicated focus on character, and so through a number of different connections, that's how I found out about the work that they're doing. I mean, they've just done some tremendous work over the years, and so through my own kind of knowledge journey on character and organization that's supporting, that's how we made the connection. They put on some great events throughout the year, and I was able to participate in a few of those, and so we've just built a good partnership on that. And again, this scholarship partnership with the organization is just another good opportunity to do that.
I love that. And with regards to the grants, you don't have a lot of information for me right now, but when can people start looking to be part of that once you make your press release?
By February 1st, no later than February 1st, the word should be out.
Okay.
But I think we're probably going to be a little ahead of schedule on that.
I love that. Well, good. Best of luck with that. And again, as we wrap today, we have just a few minutes. Again, we're talking about the abundant harvest. We're talking about you reap what you sow. I love that. And I think oftentimes people who are principle-based and think of ethics and morality, they're really wanting to do the right thing, but it's also good if you can reap what you sow in a good way. I love that. When you describe these scenarios, they range between adult and children, so you have two different sets of that. Why don't you just recap the fact that you have those different options for people, and now the new face-to-face?
Sure. So there's two different versions of Abundant Harvest. There's a teen and adult version for ages 13 and above, and then there is Abundant Harvest for kids, which is ages 7 and above. The intent and play of the game is very similar, just the scenarios and the descriptions are a little bit different for the age range. For those who want to like a board game aspect and get into a lot of discussions, the board games are very appropriate.
And you can win.
Yeah, you can win. There's declared winner.
Yeah.
And then there are face-to-face. There's the teen edition, a dinner party edition for adults, get together, and then a kids edition for 7 and above. And the intent of these are great for party favors and conversation starters, icebreakers in parties, but also for parents to guide children. I was down talking with some parents who are using these games down in Atlanta, and what they describe, they're the in-between game. When I'm driving in between soccer practice and school and dance practice and whatever, I rip open a scenario and we talk about, with today's busy lives, as parents, you got to grab every second you can, and face-to-face could be a great one.
That's perfect, and it is small enough. Take it in your car.
Yeah, very much so.
Not putting you on the spot, can you give me a dinner party scenario? Was that the one with the boss who drank too much?
No, I'll give you another one.
Let's close on one.
Sure, I'll give one. Here's one. So your 17-year-old daughter comes home from a weekend with her friend's family and shows you her new tattoo. Well, what you do?
Yeah.
So,
not a lot you can do.
Yeah, that's right. You hope it's a nice one, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So there are relationship ones, parenting ones, and just a variety of them. And again, we probably could all put up a few scenarios that could have a fun time discussion. And that's the intent of it. Get the discussion going.
Last time you were here, you had a version, and now this is the updated version. What did you update? Did you have new scenarios?
Correct. So it is I forgot to mention, it is the revised and updated version. So we changed a few of the spaces on the board. We updated the scenarios. We took a lot of feedback over the last 4 or 5 years of the original version out, incorporated that into the scenarios, made them a little bit more relevant to today's world.
Well, as the time marches on, you're going to have to continue to update it. Is your plan to come out with newer and updated?
We certainly would like to, because our world continues to put some new twists in us, so we'd love to definitely do that.
For sure. Again, mention your website so people can write that down.
Sure. It is harvesttimepartners.com. And you can get all the information about the games on the website.
And you can buy it online.
You can buy it online
with
on
Amazon
our website
online,
or Amazon.com. They're available on numerous websites, and we're continuing to move more in the marketplace. Knock on the door in your retailer and tell them they'll carry it. That'll help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David, for coming in today. I know you're all over the country promoting good principle-based games and ethics all around, so we thank you for coming to Buffalo.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time. Take care. Be well. We'll see you next week.
Western New York Tonight is brought to you by Pruden and Cant Funeral Home, located at 242 Genesee Street, Lockport, New York. Murphy Insurance Agency, 111 Pine Street in Lockport, New York. And by Lockport Presbyterian Home, located at 305 High Street in Lockport, New York.